Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. My, oh my, thank you. You've made me feel very much at home, everybody. I'm happy and honored to be with you. Thanks a lot. Fact is, I'd do anything to get out of New York. Especially on the eve of St. Patrick's Day. It gets a little crazy. I think it's our version of March Madness, or it's our version of the Derby weekend, I think. On the day after Ash Wednesday, I visited one of our wonderful Catholic schools in the Archdiocese and wanted to make sure our students understood the meaning of Lent. And I said, listen, everybody, Lent is the season of preparation for the greatest holy day in the church's calendar, which is, and one of the boys raised his hand immediately and he said, St. Patrick's Day. My, oh my, I think you'd agree, Easter is a little bit more important than St. Patrick's Day, right? Our cathedral happens to be named after St. Patrick's even, right? When I got to New York a little over 7 years ago, all the ministers, the different religions, the rabbis, the ministers, had a celebration for me, and the pastor of Christ Church Methodist on Park Avenue got up to propose a toast. And this pastor of Christ Church Methodist on Park Avenue says, Archbishop Dolan, I got a bone to pick with you. I said, oh my Lord, I've only been here a couple days and this fellow's already mad at me. He says, I had a benefactor come in from Philadelphia who told me that he was going to give me $1 million. And he got off the train at Penn Station and he told the cabbie to take him to Christ Church, and the cabbie took him to St. Patrick's Cathedral. And the benefactor said, cabbie, this ain't Christ Church, this is I told you to take me to Christ Church. This is St. Patrick's. And the cabbie said, listen, Buster, I don't know nothing about religion. All I know is this is where Christ lives in New York. If there are two places that a cardinal should feel at home, I presume it would be St. Louis, Missouri, my hometown, and Louisville, Kentucky, right? Fact is, everybody, I'd go anywhere, anytime to promote our pearl of great price, our Catholic schools. My visit here to Louisville is particularly enjoyable because of my deep affection for two wonderful Kentuckians. Number one, your radiant Archbishop Joseph Kurtz. I consider Joseph Kurtz a friend, a brother, a model shepherd, a mentor, and by the way, so do over 300 bishops of this country. It is good to be with you, Archbishop Kurtz, and forget about St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Joseph's Day this Saturday, all right? And the second great Kentuckian that I so admire, I've known even longer than I have Archbishop Kurtz. He's been part of my family for generations, but that's another story. I'm talking about Pappy Van Winkle, all right? I don't know where he got it, but Archbishop Kurtz has about 24 barrels of the stuff in his basement. I don't know if you notice, I got a bit of a cold. Now, thanks to Brian and Mary Lavin, I was able to come up on their plane today to make this possible. They heard me coughing, and Brian says, Cardinal Dolan, let me get you some special tea made with Pappy Van Winkle. So I said, Brian, is this going to cure the cold? He said, I don't know, but you'll sure feel a lot better after you drink it. All right. Thanks be to God for the Catholic Education Foundation of Louisville. Thanks be to God for this annual salute to Catholic School Alumni Dinner. Thanks be to God for leaders such as Rich Lechleiter and Kevin Woodard and Bill Rothwell. Thanks be to God for our sterling honorees this beautiful evening. Thanks be to God for all of you and your passion for our kids. Thanks be to God for leaders such as Governor Bevin, who makes the justice of parental choice a priority in his administration. Can I compliment you this evening, you wonderful leaders and promoters of Catholic education in the Archdiocese of Louisville? Can I congratulate you and thank you, particularly for giving the rest of the country a great example in 4 areas: a renewal of attitude, a renewal of governance, a renewal of sustenance, and a renewal of strategy. Let me talk a minute about each of those. You're doing all these already, people of Louisville. So look at these proposals more as affirmations of your good work. Number 1 is a renewal of attitude. See, I'm a little bit afraid that we have an implicit hospice mentality about our beloved Catholic schools. You know, hospices are a tremendous blessing. But when somebody we cherish and love goes into a hospice, well, we know that it's going to be time to say goodbye. We're grateful for their years. We want to keep them alive and with us as long as we can, and we sure don't make their passing comfortable, but, well, we admit that it's only a matter of time before we go. Now, folks, that's a less than helpful attitude when it comes to our Catholic schools. But I'm afraid throughout our country that we personally as Catholics and we as a church might have this hospice mentality about our Catholic schools. We say, oh my, what a great history they've had. What a long life they've had. Glad we had them, but, well, they're fading, and so we best hold their hand and keep them comfortable as long as we can. As the Irish say, malarkey. As the Italians say, baloney. As we New Yorkers say, well, I better not say it in mixed company, all right? Enough of that, folks, enough. Our Catholic schools are not in hospice at all. We're strong, we're vibrant, with more and more good folks like you saying, the death watch is over, the patient is strong and healthy. I'm preaching to the choir this evening. You folks don't seem to be dressed for a hospice, but for a christening. And you seem to know that the best days of Catholic education are ahead of us. Number 2. Number 2, you all here in Louisville have modeled for us a shift in governance. You know, as much as we might hate to admit it, the good old days of one school administered by one pastor, one wonderful mother superior, all in one parish, are fading. Sorry to see that, but we might as well admit it. The leadership of our schools must now come from a much broader base, with wide lay, especially parental involvement, and a much more expansive buy-in from the wider community, including the business sector. And as I look out this evening, that's precisely what I see. Number 3, you've led us, people of Louisville, in a renewal in how we finance our schools. It's time, my friends, that 131 years late, we Catholics in America finally implement the precept of the Third Plenary Council of Baltimore. See, be patient with me here. Prior to the arrival of our National Bishops' Conference, over which your Archbishop now presides, The Catholic Church in the United States counted upon its bishops periodically meeting in our first diocese, Baltimore, in a series of councils. Well, the one in 1884 was the last one. And it gave us three great gifts: the Baltimore Catechism, the Catholic University of America, and the formal legislation about our Catholic schools, namely this. Listen, every parish must have a Catholic school, the council mandated. Well, we tried. We tried hard. But even in its heyday of the 1950s, only about 2/3 of our parishes had schools. Well, better late than never, folks. It's time that every parish has a school, maybe not on its own property, but every parish will actively contribute to, send its children to, and support with time, treasure, and talent a particular school. They are Catholic schools. And as James Joyce, the great Irish writer, said, when you say Catholic, you mean here comes everybody. Well, they belong to everybody. They belong to us all. Every parish, every Catholic adult, the entire diocesan family will pitch in for the schools which belong to all of us, and you're doing it here in Louisville, and thank you for the good example you're giving the rest of us. Voila! 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 I'm looking out at a rousing group, 2,000 strong, Catholic faith, other faiths, no faith at all, who realize the communal and corporate duty to claim a child and a Catholic school. I salute the Catholic Educational Foundation that serves as a vigorous channel of that support. I compliment an archbishop, his parish priests, his people, who expect every parish to be a sustaining partner to the most successful private educational system on our planet, the American Catholic school system. Now, you know what? We're learning from you. A couple months ago, I had an extraordinarily prominent and wealthy Jewish businessman in New York come to me and give me a gift of $40 million for our Catholic schools. I'm not going to tell you his name, all right? You might imagine I was exuberant in my gratitude. And you know what he says to me? Cardinal Dolan, what are you thanking me for? He says, I am a shrewd businessman, and I have learned that one of the most successful partners we have in building up this community are the Catholic schools. And the best investment I can make in this community is to support Catholic schools, because they're going to support my business. So don't thank me, let me thank you. That's what I mean by communal buy-in. I went to visit a little 2-year-old on chemo at a pediatric oncology unit in New York. And as I'm leaving, the head of the department comes to me and says, Cardinal Dolan, thanks for coming. He says, I got to tell you something. I don't have any faith. But he says, I have to hire the doctors and nurses that care for the kids with cancer. And he says, I guess I could get in trouble for saying this, but he says, as I review their resumes, I always hire the alumni of Catholic schools, because they have the grit, and they have the hope, and they have the faith to deal with dying kids, which is one of the toughest jobs in this country. He said, thank you for your Catholic schools. That's what I'm talking about, is a communal buy-in. And finally, everybody, a renewal in strategy. Let's recover a sense of dare and dream and confidence and mission about our beloved Catholic schools. Let's start bragging about them, marketing them, showing them off. As Jesus challenged us, let's cast out to the deep. Let's take our light out from under the bushel basket and let it shine to everybody around us. We've got the best product around. You know what? Yesterday I was in our state capital, Albany, and one of our legislators whispered to me because he said, I'm afraid I'm too much of a coward to say this publicly, but he said to me, your Catholic schools do it twice as good for half the price. On my radio program the other day on Catholic Satellite Radio, which only my mom listens to, I welcome the head of the SAT exams. You know what the SAT exams are, right? I mean, these are the most prestigious exam in the country. His name is David Coleman. He's an esteemed leader in academia. He's not a Catholic. He's a very devout Jew. He's not an alumnus of our schools, but he says to me in my audience, he says, Cardinal Dolan, you people in your Catholic schools have got to stop being Rodney Dangerfields. You got to start vigorously promoting your schools as the best success story in American education. And get this, he tells me that we should halt downplaying our Catholic identity and mission because it is precisely our accent on prayer and faith and virtue and discipline and character and creed that makes us so successful. Folks, you know, when I was proud to welcome our beloved Pope Francis to New York back in September, and 3 months before when I wrote him and said, Holy Father, what do you want to see? And he wrote back with a couple things he wanted to see. But the first thing he said is, tell me about your Catholic schools. I hear about them from everybody. The jury is back, everybody. The primaries are over. The experts have weighed in. For our community and our country, you want your child to have the best chance of graduating from college, send him or her to a Catholic school. You want your child to get a good job, send him or her to a Catholic school. You want your child to have a sense of duty and service and compassion, send him or her to a Catholic school. You want your child, get this, the scholars tell us, to have a happy marriage and a family, send him or her to a Catholic school. And what about for our church? You want your child to practice and keep his faith? You want more vocations to the priesthood and religious life? Send him or her to a Catholic school. You want our Catholic immigrants to keep the faith and to become fully participative in the American experiment? Send them to a Catholic school. You want your child to share our values of God, country, family, marriage, charity, justice, and the sacredness of human life? Send them to a Catholic school. And best of all, you want your child to get to heaven? Send him or her to a Catholic school. When it comes to a quality education, we bow to no one but God. We bow to no state monopoly. We bow to no unjust laws which deny parental rights. We bow to no secular agenda. We bow to no fancy schools with all the bells and whistles, but none of the heart and soul. Catholic schools work. They excel. They come from a church that happens to have founded schools in the Western civilization. And they have given us loyal citizens and faithful disciples of Jesus in his church who are the pride of God and country. And this ballroom this evening is filled with them. And I'm honored to be with you. Thank you. God bless you. And happy St. Patrick's Day. All right?